I recently saw a video titled Jonathan Blow Crying in a Dark Room About Soulja Boy Misunderstanding Braid. The video consists of the often maligned Jonathan Blow, creator of the games Braid and The Witness, talking about his experience with the reviews of Braid when it released in 2008. Firstly, Blow explains how his obsessiveness with people's perception of his creation and his engagement with their thoughts created a public image of himself that he didn't feel truly represented him as a person.
I found that there was this perception of me on the internet that was running away very quickly from who I think I am, and that was kind of disturbing.
People saw him as a pretentious, opinionated douchebag. That simple dynamic, the relationship between Blow's self-perception and public perception, is what sparked me to make this video. That dynamic where the internet, even in large sweeping doses, confines our perception of other people. Our image of one another can't step beyond a certain threshold of superficiality in the first place because, of course, we can't know everything about each other, about how we feel and why we act, and the internet only serves to worsen the problem, degrade the integrity of our interpretations of one another. The film Synecdoche, New York works with the idea that people inherently can't mesh, the idea that we have not just insurmountable but inescapable barriers between each other. Caden Cotard spent so much of his time trying to communicate, trying to share something about himself through art, to create a work of art that says something about life, death, and love. But we can't really. We can't share anything about ourselves in a deep, meaningful way, not to the extent that Cotard wants to in his wholeness, not to the extent that Jonathan Blow wants to with Braid. The second part of the video consists of Blow talking about his negative reaction to when he saw people interfacing with his art in a way different than how he envisioned. He didn't like how people didn't get the same value from his game as he did.
People would say, oh, this game's great, 9 out of 10, or 10 out of 10, and they'd say what's good about the game. And in many cases, it would be just a very surface understanding of the game that didn't even see what I thought was most special about it. And they think it's great, but the connection isn't there.
You could just as easily blame this on the art as you could the consumer. Art can fail in communicating, and a consumer can fail in interpreting or criticizing. But Blow doesn't exactly lay the blame on either party in the video. He only lays out the problem, the misalignment between his expectation and reality. I find that lack of a distinct conclusion very interesting. It's probably the most interesting thing in the video. There's some dissonance at play with how Blow seems to think of his creation as a solid block, but then finds it melting like wax as his own interpretation slips right in front of us. To see Jonathan Blow have this interaction with public perception, and to see that interaction make him, by his description,
seriously depressed,
kind of reaffirms a deep part of me that feels I would react the same in a similar situation. I don't see people deliberately speaking in this vulnerable way very often. My thoughts would end there, a light examination of a short and mostly simple clip of Jonathan Blow speaking about his game. But what really pushed these thoughts out of my head and into a video was this comment. Expression of ideas is part of a game. If he's disappointed that people are misinterpreting the message of the game, then he failed to express that message, and thus that is a failing on the game. The problem is that people like Braid, they just aren't playing with his toys the way he wants them to be played with. It reads extremely bitter. Jonathan Blow finds himself disappointed primarily because how he envisioned the game didn't align with how some people enjoyed it. But the comment takes it to mean that Blow thinks everyone is wrong in their enjoyment, that Blow expressly disagrees with how people experienced it. Blow is sad because his art got away from him. He couldn't control it after a quick surge in popularity. Again, I find it a vulnerable thing to admit the depression that followed, but the comment dodges that vulnerability and humanity in favor of something cold, centered on some kind of logic, and poor logic at that. The idea that an artist cannot be upset at how their works are interpreted, and that every interpretation is somehow useful and correct in some way. Even stranger is another unrelated reply I encountered right underneath the other. Okay, whatever his pretentious and delusional reasons are, he's still getting angry at people enjoying his game. It's honestly insane. The comment reads even more bitter than the last, coming in two parts. The first part claims that his reasoning is quote-unquote pretentious and delusional, and I can't begin to imagine the mindset one needs to come to a conclusion like this. It's just mean. I don't need to make a complicated point, it's just mean towards someone being sincere about how they feel. What Jonathan Blow says is not pretentious in any way, and to call him delusional only serves to insult him. The second part of the comment, however, disregards the first and says that, no matter what his reasoning is, it's insane to, quote-unquote, get angry at people enjoying his game. I could easily come to a rational conclusion about this comment. I could easily explain in a couple sentences at least why this is wrong, but I think it's much more effective just to let you think about it and what it says, why it says it, and what it means, what people need to say to justify their hatred of Blow, a man whose public perception as pretentious and delusional forces people down pipelines. The more I think about it, the more I find myself frustrated with the complete unwillingness to cooperate with people on some kind of human level. Even though Blow has other, wilder, even harmful opinions, I want to empathize with him, or at least sympathize with him, on his emotional response. You can have your cake and eat it too. Blow can have bad and good opinions, good and bad responses to situations. But Now, we're somewhere strange. Why should anyone go out of their way to form a complex opinion on Jonathan Blow? We shouldn't.